Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Bhujangga Bagus Agastya Pranandita, and today I'll be analyzing one of Victoria's most vital sectors, the agri-tech and agri-food ecosystem. For this assignment, I have selected the agri-tech and agri-food entrepreneurial ecosystem in Victoria. Now, since we are all focusing on Victoria, the question is, why agri-tech? I chose the specific ecosystem because it represents the most dynamic intersections of our state's two biggest strengths. First, our world class tech sector in Melbourne and our primary production in regional areas. While other industries might be more siloed, agri tech requires a complex web of collaboration between software engineers, biotechnologists, and traditional farmers. This makes it a much more analytically rich environment to evaluate for this task. Furthermore, agri-tech offers a level of institutional identity that you don't see in other sectors. We have specialized accelerators like Sprout X and dedicated VCS like Tenacious Ventures that are unique to this industry. This allows me to analyze how support and finance actually function in a niche, high-growth environment. To keep my analysis focused, I am excluding the traditional broad acre farming and general logistics. These are major sectors, and my goal is to isolate the entrepreneurial innovation, the startups that are scaling through AI and Internet of Things. By focusing here, we can truly see how Victoria's living lab, the 2 hour loop between the city and the farm, drives global competitiveness. All right, let's dive into the engine room of this ecosystem using the BEEP framework. I want to show you how all these pieces actually fit together in Victoria. First, let's talk about policy. We are very lucky here because the Victorian government isn't just watching from the sidelines. Through LaunchVic, they are actively feeding the ecosystem with specific agri-tech grants. They've also laid out a digital agriculture strategy, which basically means the government has a clear roadmap to make our state the most tech-advanced food producer in the country. Now, an ecosystem is nothing without its people, right? Our human capital. We have this amazing talent pipeline coming out of MIT University and University of Melbourne. But it's not just about students in Melbourne. It's about a unique collaboration where data scientists work hand in hand with regional farmers. This cross pollination of skills is exactly what drives innovation. Moving on to support and infrastructure. You have probably heard of Sprout X. It's more than just an office. It's an accelerator that teaches founders how to scale. And let's be real, tech is definitely useless without internet. That's why the government $550 million digital future strategy is such a game changer. It's putting 5G in the middle of the paddock so our sensors can actually send data. But now, where does the money come from? The finance side is incredibly vibrant. We have tenacious ventures right here in Melbourne. They're specialists. They only do agri-tech. Having investors who actually understand soil and supply chains is a massive advantage for our startups. And finally, we look at markets and culture. Thanks to Victorian Farmers Federations, our startups have direct ticket to test their products on real farms. And honestly, culture has changed. Farmers in Victoria aren't old school anymore. They are becoming tech savvy and are proud to use local Melbourne made innovations. This cultural shift is the secret sauce that makes our agri-tech ecosystem so resilient. Now, to ensure a truly deep analysis, I've broken down our five key resources using the Fryo framework, providing a clear rationale for each. The AgriBio Hub is our strongest asset. It's valuable because it bridges the gap between science and business. It's rare and hard to imitate because of the massive $288 million investment required. Because our ecosystem is organized to give startup access to these labs, it provides a sustained competitive advantage. Next, we have Tenacious Ventures and Sprout X. These are valuable because they provide niche expertise. While they are currently rare in Australia, they are theoretically immutable if other states decide to launch similar specialized funds. Therefore, they offer a temporary competitive advantage, giving Victoria a first mover head start. And finally, looking at our farmers network and university talent, these provide competitive parity. While every state has farmers and students, Victoria is uniquely organized to connect them. For example, RMIT's internship programs ensure that talent doesn't just stay in the classroom, but actually enters the agri-tech startup workforce. So this organized synergy is what keeps our ecosystem vibrant and functioning. Now, we move to the most dynamic part of the ecosystem, the networks. An ecosystem isn't just a list of names, it's about how these actors interact to create value. Following the framework from Wig3, we can categorize these interactions into three levels. First, we have formal networks. This is where the Victorian government and industry bodies like the VFF provide the official structure and policy support that startups need to gain legitimacy. Second, and perhaps more importantly, are the informal networks. In the Victorian agri-tech scene, social capital is huge. Through hubs like SproutX, founders get access to mentorship circles. This creates a high trust environment where an entrepreneur can get advice from someone who has successfully scaled an agri-tech business before. Finally, we have knowledge networks. This is the anatomy of our innovation. Facilities like AgriBio act as a central incubator hub where research labs and startups co-create technology. These interdependencies mean that if you are a startup in Victoria, you aren't working in an isolation. You aren't working alone. You are plugged into a system of formal, informal, and knowledge ties that collectively lower the risk of failure and accelerate innovation. Now looking at the anatomy of our incubator hub, we can see how the ecosystem actually functions. At the center, we have hubs like SproutX that act as a bridge. It connects our funders who bring the ideas with mentors from the VFF to ensure the tech is practical for farmers. On the other side, investors like Tenacious Ventures provide the smart capital to scale, while research labs at MIT provide the scientific validation. This interaction between academia, government, and industry creates the synergy needed for a truly resilient and sustainable agri-tech environment in Victoria. Now, to really understand the engine behind this ecosystem, we need to look at the triple helix framework. This is what makes Victoria's agri-tech sector so resilient and vibrant. And this is not just a list of organizations, it's a synergy between each other. First, we have our universities like MIT. They are the brains. They provide the cutting-edge R&D and the talent pool that startups need to build complex tech. Second, the government act as the enabler. Through agencies like LaunchVic, they provide the essential grants and digital strategies that lower the risk for founders. And finally, industry. The farmers and private investors provide the testing ground. Without the Victorian Farmers Federation giving startups access to real farms, this innovation would never leave the laboratory. In Victoria, these three strands are tightly intertwined. When a university researcher works with a government funded startup to solve a problem for a regional farmer, that is the triple helix in action. This collaboration is why our ecosystem is sustainable and globally competitive. To conclude our analysis, let's look at a critical recent development that has reshaped this ecosystem over the last 2 to 3 years: the rollout of the National Reconstruction Fund and the Victoria's targeted agri-tech grants. This development has caused a significant shift in power dynamics. Previously, innovation was dominated by large, established agribusinesses. However, with billions of dollars now flowing specifically toward value-adding agriculture, we are seeing a rise in founder power. Small, agile startups now have the resources to challenge the status quo. The opportunities are immense, especially in climate tech. With the global focus on sustainability, Victorian startups are now leading the way in carbon tracking and water saving technologies. However, it's not without challenges. The complexity gap means startups would now face much stricter regulations regarding data privacy and AI ethics. For our stakeholders, this is a game changer. For investors, the ecosystem is now de-risked because the government is co-investing. For entrepreneurs, it provides a vital safety net to scale globally. This development perfectly illustrates the triple helix in action. For government, policy creates a direct ripple effect across industry and academia. Finally, looking toward the next 3 years, I forecast a critical trend: the move toward mandatory digital traceability. As global markets become stricter about food safety, Victoria's ecosystem will shift its focus from just growing food or growing more food to proving the food is safe. This isn't just a generic tech trend, but it's a biosecurity necessity for Victoria to maintain its $19 billion agriculture export value. So, what does this mean for our stakeholders? For entrepreneurs, the gold rush will be in creating sensors and blockchain tools that can track a product from a Victorian farm all the way to a dinner table in, for example, Singapore, Tokyo, or other countries. For investors, we will see a shift in funding toward hard tech, physical sensors, and automated monitoring systems, which are harder to build but create much deeper cryo-style barriers to entry. To adapt, our triple helix must respond strategically. The government would likely move from suggesting digital tools to mandating them for export. Success in 2028 won't just depend on how much we produce, but on the digital integrity of our data. This trend will solidify Victoria's position not just as a food bowl, but as a global leader in trusted food systems. To wrap up, here's a list of credible resources I've used to validate this analysis. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I look forward to your feedback. Have a great day.